marriage equality. They'll give us, a few little trinkets, if you will, and they'll back away, and then they'll turn back around and find some kind of way or some other issue to attack, which brings it back full circle to the original issue. And it seems as though the American attention span is that of a gnat. They forget. Because I guess my question is, once they give us a little something to kind of satisfy us or satiate, whatever, basically they turn around and they take it back and they take back more.
I have a question.
Sure.
Why? This is something that I've always took some exception with. I'm wondering, why does everybody assume that they're dealing with basically a good intentioned majority? I mean, doesn't it make more sense to think that they're enjoying white privilege and don't want to give it up, basically?
Well, I don't.
I mean, you're thinking, wow, we should really feel bad about this and give up all of our white privilege and make everybody equal. I mean, why does everybody assume that?
I don't think that anyone is necessarily assuming it. I think.
Why can't the average white person just be like, hey, I'm glad black people don't have what I have, and I'm going to do everything I can possibly do to keep it that way? Why is
because I don't think that there's sufficient evidence to say that, especially in a country that just elected a half black president. Now, I think what you can say is that there are a lot of people who are ignorant, at least, of the differences that exist. They're ignorant. Well, I mean, look at for example, we talk about education. I think maybe it was a year or so ago that there was a commission report that looked at the teaching of the civil rights movement in school and found that it was severely lacking. That they basically had, glossed over many aspects of the civil rights movement that pretty much would give students a clear picture of what had happened. And this again goes back to the whole idea of revisionist history. I mean, it goes to what the Tea Partiers and Sarah Palin were saying about Sarah Palin and Michelle Bachmann. I think it was Michelle Bachmann said that our forefathers were against slavery, that our American forefathers were against slavery.
Well, when you pointed out,
it's totally bogus.
But you pointed out earlier that Barack Obama being elected actually was the impetus for lots of white hate groups to rise, correct?
Exactly.
Yes, that doesn't.
But let me.
White people are.
I mean, I'm not saying.
White people are.
I didn't.
The majority of white people are.
No, I didn't say the majority. I said that we assume
that the average. You said the average, meaning that at least 50%. Okay, we're talking about that area in the middle, right? We're talking about the majority. We're talking the average person, not the people on the edges, right?
Okay, well,
that fall directly in the middle.
Can I finish?
Are somehow more.
Can I finish?
More on the side of. Okay, go ahead.
So basically, if in fact Barack Obama's election scared so many people that there was a rise in hate groups, what is there to say that, for example, that these people want that America should be like? They want the Mexicans to go home, for example. They don't care about Irish people migrating here, but they have problems with Mexicans migrating here, or Africans, or any brown Muslims, or any brown people. I mean, as you intimated earlier about the abortion thing, I've heard people say, and I'm not going to hold this, but I've heard people say that the abortionist is just really concerned with white people getting abortions. They're not particularly caring about black people getting abortions. But in any event, I keep on hearing this conversation that there's this, or you're saying not the majority or whatever, but I guess the conversation is always the majority of white people are just ignorant to their institutionalized racism, and if they only knew better, they would actually be more morally correct. And I'm not so sure.
I've never suggested that. I said that the majority of them were ignorant.
Yeah, right.
So it's hard to have that conversation. I never said that if you somehow educated them all, that they would want to do something different. I do think that there are a good number of white people who are interested in making things different and they're not aware of the sort of privilege that they have to begin with. And so you have to, just like there are African American studies, there are some people who have promoted the idea that there should be whiteness studies, so that we can talk about how whiteness is constructed, because there wasn't always this idea of whiteness. Whiteness is something that evolved over time. It came from, it started with, sort of an idea of me coming from this very localized area. So I was Anglo-Saxon, right? If I'm Anglo-Saxon, right, I want to bond with other Anglo-Saxons. And then, then it became, okay, well, I can't bond with all Anglo-Saxons, so maybe I'll bond with, other Christians, Then we have Christendom. Then as we start exploring the world and conquering and enslaving people, we then become European, and so on and so forth, to the point that now we have this construction of whiteness that we didn't always have. So, it's something that we have to discuss. We have to have the discussion. Throwing your hands up in the air and saying that, oh, well, they don't really care, is not effective. You still have to have a conversation.
I'm not throwing my hands in the air.
Without the conversation, you can't say who is who's walking around saying, hey,
but we've been trying to have this conversation. We've been trying to have this conversation.
I don't know that we really have. I don't know that we really have on the national. We haven't really had that conversation. Not really, though, and we haven't pushed it to that extent as of yet, to talk about what whiteness is, how it's constructed, what privilege is. We haven't had it. I mean, the privilege was not a discussion that we needed to have when they were beating us in the head. We were just trying to get them to stop beating us in the head. So now we're at a point in time where they're no longer beating us in the head necessarily, although in some cases, in a lot of cases, particularly in the cities with the police and stop and frisk and all of these sort of discriminatory policies that we have in place. Yes, we still have to address that. But I think on the whole, most people need to be educated on what privilege is and how this discrimination has become ingrained in our institutions, to the point where someone who is not necessarily explicitly racist can act in ways that are discriminatory towards particular groups. And that's the discussion that we need to
have. Hold on. Jeez. Okay. I want to hit back on a topic a little bit earlier that we kind of went over. It was the fact that not a lot of white people know exactly how much privilege they have, and that even if they all were aware, not all of them would really change anything that they did, because if you were to say, well, I have all this privilege, why would I change that and possibly make it an even playing field? There are not too many, I really can't think of any detrimental negative white stereotypes that affect white people on a scale as us. I really can't, because my son could walk, 10, 15 years from now, walk into any job, and then he could have a myriad of negative racial stereotypes depending on just where they grow up or what TV shows they watch. I mean, there's not a lot of positive exposure, for anyone with dark skin. It's either you're Hispanic possibly, and you got here legally, or the darker you got, well, you're just a degenerate brought here by my ancestors, and you're just leeching off of my tax money, and now you're just trying to do the minimum amount of work to supply your welfare checks. So all these negative racial stereotypes and a lot of lies that have to be eventually worked out of our society. But I don't see too much of an advantage for anyone outside of our race to change it, because this works in their favor. If these group of people can't get jobs, well, then that's good, because now I can get that job and I don't have to do anything. I can do whatever I want, and I won't have this negative racial stereotype against me because people that look like me already know or already assume to know that I'm going to be better than that person. So it's
Okay.
yeah.
Again, you're assuming that the majority of European people of European descent or white folks are thinking along those lines, and there's nothing to suggest that the majority of them are thinking along those lines. There are, particularly, that's why, it's one of the reasons why the Republican Party is effective is playing on the fears of people who believe those things. And so, yes, there are a significant majority, or not a significant majority in the Republican Party that are influenced by those things. But I wouldn't say that you could say that across the board that there are people who are interested in maintaining those the status quo or maintaining, a discriminatory environment against blacks or people of other, racial designation. I don't think that you can fairly assume that.
Well, I'm not going to. What I would like, and this is not rhetorical, what I would like to know is, and this might help me to be more cheerful, actually. Why do you think that?
Why is it that way in the Republican Party?
No. Why do you have this, I don't know, optimistic, cheery, I don't know.
I don't know that it's optimistic or cheery. I think that I'm a fairly realistic person.
But why do you tend to be erring on the side of if they only knew the majority? Well, I don't know if you're saying majority.
I think you're mischaracterizing my position a little bit.
I'm not trying to mischaracterize it, and I'm serious.
Okay.
I'm serious. So I'm not trying to. Yeah. Okay.
So go ahead, Lynn.
I guess my position is the first thing I have to say is I don't see what is gained by maintaining a position that says that they're not interested in working with us, they're not interested in changing things, and they're not interested in having a discussion. I think that is counterproductive to begin with. As far as what I believe for the majority, of white people, I don't believe that most of them do. I don't. And I take examples like the election of Barack Obama to be evidence of that. I take, for example, the increase in sort of multiculturalism and sort of biracial relationships and all of these things to be an indicator that our society is changing its views in terms of race. Even though our society as a whole is moving towards a more progressive view on race, we're still going to have those conversations. But I think that if you look at our culture is definitely moving in a more positive direction, although not as quickly as many of us would like. Definitely not as quickly as I would like. But I think there are many indicators.
And I just kind of wanted to jump in there a little bit because earlier there was a statement about immigrants and how some of the European people want to send immigrants back. Well, yes and no. I posted an article either yesterday or the day before in which the incarceration of immigrants is big business, just like the incarceration of, U.S. citizens, minorities as well. So while you have a lot of these GOPers out there stating that they're against, immigration and send them back, they're also receiving money from different groups that own these private jails that, have these companies that are publicly traded and they make money on the incarceration of immigrants as well as minorities. So they're wanting to send immigrants back to, or Mexicans back to Mexico. It's a route. I believe it's smoke and mirrors. I believe it's all about the money. And they're making a lot of money off of this. I posted it, the article. And in the article, it shows how much money Boehner gets and several other people, McCain.
I saw that.
Yeah, so I believe it's a much deeper issue. And when you were talking about the minority or black or brown immigrants as opposed to the white immigrants. Yes, I mean, we have a lot of Polish immigrants in this country. Not only Irish, but Polish. As a matter of fact, they have planes that take, that are full of Polish people that fly back several times from here to Poland. And they come here, they work, they earn a living, they get a pension, and once they retire, they leave America and go back to their country and collect their American benefits. But I don't see anyone asking them for their papers. So, it's about money, and I mean, I believe that these issues are a lot deeper, different shows will come up in which we can investigate and, pontificate about this a lot more. But yeah, going back to another issue, but Barack Obama, being the first biracial president, or some people's eyes, the first black president, yeah, membership in these militias and hate groups, it grew exponentially. And we need to watch out for that. However, I also want to, level the playing field here. There are black militias as well. And some of these same people have an issue with Barack Obama. So I guess my question is, is that self-hate, or, I mean, what's really going on here?
So
Before we go in that direction, Tim, I just want to say, that, I read an article recently, and this was concerning feminism, but I think it kind of applies in this instance. That when you see, like, what you're seeing with the rise in militias, I think I would like to think, to a certain extent, it's kind of is extinction birth. It's kind of an extinction birth phenomenon. You know what I mean? We're getting to a point in our society where at least things are becoming at least less explicitly racist. And we have to turn the conversation to an issue of white privilege, because that is sort of the direction that things are going. Things are much less, out there. But it's kind of an extinction birth activity. Like when you do Operation Fishnet, and you train a rat to press a particular lever for food, and you decide later to switch the criterion, what you often see is that they will go back to the lever that they first learned on, and they'll hit it like a million times. And sometimes it can happen more than once. But it's just a trigger of the old behavior. You understand what I'm saying? So I kind of, in a sense, kind of think about the whole rise in militias, particularly those that have a racist bent, as sort of an extinction birth behavior. This sort of behavior is going the way of the dinosaur.
I've seen extinction births before. I've seen that.
It's less and less acceptable, you know what I mean, to behave and to think that way, at least outwardly.
I've seen examples of extinction bursts before that seem to work. That's interesting. In terms of, it'll probably get a little bit worse before it gets better. You know what I mean? Like, we're I think things are sort of coming to a point where we have these revolutions every so often. You know what I mean? In our culture, where we have a change in our collective consciousness. You know what I mean? And these things happen in cycles, sometimes 30 years, sometimes more. And I think we're getting to, it's the same thing that's going on with gay marriage right now. At least half of the country now is at least okay with the idea of gays getting married, which is way more than it was just a couple decades ago.
I think it's the advent of technology is really helping that.
Yeah, I mean, again, it's technology. It's the election of a half black president. Is the fact that there are more people who look, their culture looks different. I guess our country looks different. eats different food. It connects with people in different ways. You know what I mean? And those sorts of things over time change people's minds about things. They get exposed to different things. They're challenged on different things.
Well, that's what's scary.
Yeah, I mean, it's scary, but it's also good in a way too. I mean, and we need this. We need to be challenged. I mean, challenge is good. That's,
I mean, not necessarily scary to me personally, but that's scary to people I talk to, especially staunch Christians. They see this change, and it's apparent because it's becoming more and more prevalent among the younger generations, and they're not singing the same song as their parents of, bigotry, hate, fear, as it was in the past. So it's more of acceptance, tolerance, and peace. So that's what's really scaring them, is that, well, we're moving away from, the traditional values of what America used to be. Well, the first 200 years of America was pretty shitty. I'm not sure whose history that they're referring to, but the further,
a lot of these people they want to go back to the 1950s for the reasons that I gave you before.
Yeah, exactly. And it's like, I brought this point up. Anybody who ever says this or says that to you, you can always reply with, the further you go back in American history, the more rights people lose. I mean, and that's any way you look at it, that's what always works. The further you go back, the less rights people have. And that's a shame that our history is like that, but at least that shows a trend of moving forward and acceptance. Because, and in all honesty, I always come back to this in the gay marriage debate. When gay people get married, guess what happens? They get married. For each gay man that gets married to another man, my marriage does not suffer one bit at all. It's not affected. Yeah. So it's a lot more than people make it seem. And I have to also point at our media system, which is just a travesty to say the least, and spreading misinformation, and intentionally too. And people just eat it up. And the people know that the media does that, and they don't care.
Yeah, but there's the internet and there's Skype.
Kim, do we have any other callers? I just want to
At the time, no, we don't have any other callers on the line. But if anyone is interested in calling in, the telephone is 310-982-4273. Again, that's 310-982-4273. Press 1 to let us know that you would like to speak with us. And you can also Skype to the show. So if you scroll up to the top, you'll see the telephone number in a big blue S. Click the blue S, and that will connect you in and let us know that you would like to speak with us. But, this has been a very enlightening conversation. And, we've covered, a myriad of different topics here. And again,
a lot, yeah.
And, some of these conversations will be run off into different shows in which we can discuss these particular issues. And it's just interesting. I believe that we are evolving as a culture, the American culture. We have a lot of work to do, but one of my cautions is I don't want us to continue having, ADD, short attention span, and then we keep tackling the same issues over and over. I mean, the same issues are going to come up, but we shouldn't have to start from scratch, from square one every time. We should be building on these particular issues. And when I say building on an issue, I'm talking about evolving, making it better every time we tackle an issue. We should not have to go back to square one, and that's what I'm saying in a lot of different, in a lot of different cases. We do have a Skype caller here. This is Yankee. All right, Yankee. I'm getting ready to pull you onto the conversation.
We talk about evolution, but how about certain groups like the Quakers and the Amish who have practiced a certain lifestyle for an awful long time? But as a matter of fact, I'm jealous of that of the Amish, and I think it's something that needs to be recognized and respected. Gay marriage, no one is not saying that gays don't have the right to have these relationships amongst each other or whatever is going on. What the thing is, the point is that states have a right to define what marriage is. That was given to them by the Constitution of the United States, which is the supreme law of the land.
No, but we have a constitution that says that you can't infringe upon the rights of citizens. You can't discriminate.
The 14th Amendment says anyone born in a state is a citizen of that state. That state sets the laws that governs its citizenship. Please read it. And another point.
I have. That's why I also know that you can't discriminate against people on the basis of race, gender, ethnicity, or anything else. You need to also check the amendment.
You know, what amendment says that? There's no one's infringing on anybody's civil rights.
Laws. We have federal laws. You can check your amendments again. We have federal laws and constitution, and the Supreme Court of this nation has said repeatedly protected the rights of people on the basis of race, gender, ethnicity, and what have you. So there's no discriminating against people on that basis. If they're tax-paying citizens and they live in this country, they have the right to get married.
Well, yes, but as I said before, the states have the right to define what marriage is.
No, they don't. No, they don't.
Well, how many states do not recognize same-sex marriage?
There's quite a few at this point.
All right, so you mean to tell me that these states are doing something wrong based on the Constitution? Yes. Do you think not that the Justice Department would go after them for that position?
Well,
you know, how many states?
The Justice Department isn't doing that currently because, I mean, at this point, it's not in the law that in most of those states that you can't get married. It's just that is how it's been. They haven't recognized those things.
Right, they haven't recognized. I think what they should do is have a marriage that's categorized as heterosexual marriage license and same-sex marriage license. Maybe that would solve the problem.
No, I think
across the board. I believe across the board it should be civil unions for everybody. Civil unions for hetero and gay, and then if you want a marriage can be conducted by the church. However, there are gay affirming churches as well that will conduct a marriage, but I think it should just be civil unions across the board for everyone.
Well, marriages don't have to be conducted by the church, by the way, because some people don't even subscribe to churches. And just like I mentioned
but you're not listening to what I'm saying. I'm saying that it should be civil unions across the board for gay couples, heterosexual couples, and then if they want to have a marriage certificate or be institutionalized as a marriage, then that will be conducted by a church.
Well,
that's what I'm saying.
I think what it is just how, as far as the contractual arrangements and the legalities, how states recognize it. And presently, as it is now, there are states that don't recognize same-sex marriage. There is countries that don't recognize same-sex marriage. And in the United States,
there are many countries that are. South Africa, for example, recognizes same-sex marriage. And this is, this is like 30 years after apartheid. So, you got to, at some point, we're going to have to evolve ourselves to the point where we stand by certain principles.
Well,
like
when you say
civil rights for everyone.
When you say the we,
rights for everyone.
When you say the we, I think it's up to these people in these countries who have been living based on traditional values for a long time and have nowhere near the social problems that we have here and that's going on here in the United States. It's up to them.
And they all have their own social. They all have social problems.
Absolutely, and many of them are rewriting their constitution to include that life begins at conception, and they are not recognizing in their constitution they're defining marriage as being between man and female, and they have a right to do that.
And they're wrong. But
no, they are not wrong.
No, they are wrong. They're wrong. They're wrong. Just like many countries recognize slavery as something that was right, and that there were certain people who were less than others. Just like some countries don't believe in the rights of women. They don't believe that women should be driving cars or able to vote or able to go to school. They're wrong.
Well, that's within
some things are just wrong. They're
fundamental would you agree that
There's fundamental right and wrong.
Would you agree that there's a difference between right and wrong and what's legal and illegal?
Yeah, there's difference.
Pardon me?
Yeah, there are differences. I mean, clearly. I mean, obviously, the civil rights movement wouldn't have happened if we just abided by all law.
Absolutely. So what's right for some may be wrong for others. Right?
No.
When
it comes to human rights, either everyone has rights or no one has rights.
Well, rights is subjective because there's some people.
No.
Well, they are too.
How are they subjective?
If you let me,
what's subjective about them?
If you let me say what I've got to say, maybe I can, give you some cases. Some people that it's good to have sex with kids. Okay.
Well, that's the problem. No, but see, you're making that's a straw. That's not a good argument. That's a false argument. Because first off, children are not adults. They do not have the ability to consent to sexual activity with an adult as an adult, and they are not physically or mentally capable of making the same decisions as an adult. We have scientific evidence to back that up.
Well, scientific evidence change. Scientific evidence change. What is the good age of consent? What should be a good age? Should it be 12, 14, 16, 18?
2.5.
Honestly, I think that a good age of consent is probably 18.
Well,
between 18 and 21.
But that is your opinion. But in some countries,
it's my opinion based upon when the brain is close to adulthood.
But there's some brains that's very developed, very. But in some states, you have consent that is young as 16 years old here in the United States. And
I do realize that.
And it is the law. It's not somebody's opinion. It's not somebody's feeling to
No,
write.
The law is an opinion. That's why we changed the law. The law is opinion. The law is opinion that we make codified.
Yeah,
that's
but
what we do. That's why we were able during the civil rights movement to change the law.
But it's a
consensus. Because we changed the opinion of legislators.
It's a consensus opinion, not that of an individual.
Okay, and consensus opinion can be wrong, as it was wrong when slavery was the law of the land.
Well, as I said before, that was some people's suggestion. And just like, for instance, Castleton.
And they were wrong. I mean, you can have an opinion all you want. That doesn't mean that your opinion isn't wrong.
Well, they was wrong, but they was legal.
Okay, and your point is, and now it's illegal. So,
yeah.
So we're just supposed to abide by a law that was formed by ignorant, stupid people. It was formed in this law now.
Slavery is not totally illegal if you read your Constitution. And another point, just like
it actually is. But go ahead.
Not in prison, it's not legal. I mean, read it.
Well, actually, slavery isn't. Prisons aren't really slave institutions. But I understand the point that you're getting at, and I do have some views on the prison system. But they're not prisons.
Well, how about
prisons are not slave institutions?
How about you stand your ground? Your stand your ground legislation. I think that's a good legislation. Open carry and
you know what? I don't necessarily disagree that stand your ground is bad legislation. It's just applied wrong.
Exactly.
Yeah. So as far as gay marriage and so forth, it's going through these trials and tribulations. But I still say
eventually gay marriage will be the law, and people will be able to get married as anyone else.
Well, that stands to be seen. And another thing,
it's going to happen. 50% of the country is already on board, so it's going to be.
As long as the president of the United States,
we had 50% that was supportive of Obama. Now things have changed. But one other point too, the Constitution of the United States.
I don't think things have changed. It's still up. Over Romney.
The Constitution of the United States permits people to associate with whomever they want to, or disassociate with whomever they wish not to be around. And now I'm sure you agree with that, and there's no right or wrong to it.
Okay, what is your point?
Well, it's quite obvious. It should have been self-explanatory. If I don't want to be
around
you...
No, it's not. I'm just trying to... right, if you don't want to be around me, then you don't have to be around me. That's fine.
Right.
Right, but that doesn't mean that I have to somehow segregate myself from the population or purposefully avoid you based on your right right to decide not to associate.
No, you don't.
So I don't understand what your point is. So
the point is
that clear, maybe give them
it's that there's nothing wrong. You have if a parent wants to teach their children that this is good and that is bad, not to do this, not to do that, to marry this one, don't marry that one, that's perfectly within their own bounds to do so. And
no, they're within their rights. I've already said that you're allowed to have your own opinion on anything.